Good morning, good morning. Hey, what's going on? It's Friday. It's a feel good Friday. The week's over, right? But what the hell happened yesterday? My goodness, that was a hell of a day. I gotta say, to see everything just literally up double digits off to my watch list right now from yesterday's price action. I gotta say it was literally unreal to see that same type of price action. What is like that was legit a trend day. That's what you call a trend day right there. I mean that was nonstop, just literally mooning all day yesterday. I think at whatever given point you bought calls, it literally just went up. But that was just showing the relative strength in terms of the fact that inflation data meant apparently a whole lot more than we anticipated. But do I feel like this is still a bear market rally? Yes, I do. All right, so I'll get that out of the way. I still believe this is a bear market rally. Do I believe that it has some more upside still left in the tank here? As we see, it's already still pumping pre market. Yes, I do, in which I'll get to my level here that I'm targeting potentially going into next week. But yeah, this is a beautiful rally, and the bigger thing that I kind of want to express this morning, and this is why you see the illustration on the live right now, is that when you're ever in doubt, whenever you feel like what the hell just happened, what's the perspective, well, why the hell did all this happen? It's always good to zoom out the chart, and that's exactly why I pulled out the weekly for everyone to get the larger picture of what's particularly going on. All right. Jurgen, good morning from Norway. Wow, my guy. Okay, that's a hell of a way from where I am. I'm in Miami and you're from Norway. But good to see you. Good to hear from you, man. AA in Greece right now, still watching FC. Holy crap, you're in Greece. Well, it is better than what I had to go through. Well, I mean, it wasn't that bad. We had that storm that I think went through, was it like last night or so? But it was nothing crazy. So I mean, we're all fine here, but yeah, weather's back in Miami. It's really beautiful now. Now I can just go enjoy my weekend here now. That's what I'm looking forward to. All right. But let's get into some stocks. Let's actually get into pretty much the analysis on SPY here, so I can kind of give you guys my straightforward kind of logic and thinking of what I'm looking at generally for SPY. Right. So larger degree pattern here, and that's pretty much my basis, is that you can see a weekly falling wedge on SPY. All right, that's the bigger thing. You basically have three different endpoints. You had your bottom that took place from October 10th. You have a bottom that dated back towards June of this year as well, June 13th, and that also anchored a wick low basically from during our COVID rally, dating back towards May of last year. All right, and that created my well-defined trendline support for this falling wedge. And then we also have three tipping points for the downtrend resistance from our peak of the market rally that we dating back towards January 3rd. Again, your next peak dating back towards March 28th, and then our most recent peak from August 15th. So indications would point to the fact that okay, you have three peaks, you have three topping, 3 points of resistance for this falling wedge. That indication would be that we would push up towards a resistance, whether that case be roughly around 410 or so. That would particularly be ideally the ballpark of where we potentially should end up reaching if the falling wedge takes place, and we would attempt to break out beyond that 410 level on SPY for this falling wedge. All right. Hello, but good morning. Good morning. Yesterday was fire. I'm not gonna lie. Yesterday was probably one of the easiest days to make money, and I think we all particularly needed that kind of day, especially given the fact of the range days that we've had, just premium chop, the red days that we've had, where it's just been killing premium and spiking premium for that matter. We needed this kind of day, particularly that happened yesterday. But going back to SPY, like I mentioned, you would anticipate as we're starting to push up and towards this resistance of the falling wedge, you would anticipate 410. I'm more so interested to get into a short position as we approach up towards 405. That's the level of confluence that I'm looking for. 405, 406. Between that mark right there is where I'm going to particularly be looking for a short position and more likely out towards the end of the year. That's what's more so going to be on my mind right now because of the fact that that level of confluence is a little bit of a zone here, as you can kind of see my little gray shaded area between that 406 to 410. That's particularly that zone where we're likely going to see that whiplash. We may get that wick to the upside here on any given particular day, and then I believe that we're going to end up fading right back to the downside. So I'm going to look to see if I can get in as close as I can, more so towards that 406 mark. But that level has actually been a very level of confluence dating back towards May of last year during that COVID rally that we had. And between the seesaw of events, the little seesaw price action more so that we've had, that 405, 406 mark has been a level of confluence. So in case we end up rejection short of hitting the downtrend resistance of the falling wedge, I'm going to look to start to scale in at 406 and I'll build my short position going out towards the end of the year as I would anticipate we are going to reverse. But now, why would be my logic for the fact that we're going to end up reversing, right? Why wouldn't we particularly just break out north of the falling wedge here on SPY? Well, the fact is that, yeah, the inflation data was amazing. The fact that companies are cutting costs, it's looking like everything is pretty much peachy right now. The fact is that Powell literally gave us a statement that is going to ultimately be our downfall until we hear otherwise. And that was the fact that there is no sign of relief from the rate hikes and for how long that rate hike is going to pretty much progress. So we're not going to necessarily say, you know what, today's price action, well, yesterday's price action is pretty much a sign of the fact that the market is going to have a straight up V-shaped recovery and everything is all good. Economy is fully off recovery here, but that is not the case because there are going to be more rate hikes. And at this point in time, the fact that we don't know how much longer it's going to progress, and we already have the known fact that it's going to go on beyond next year, that leads me to give me that indication that no matter even if we push in right into that resistance at 411 here, roughly around that 411 mark, and we go straight vertical as we are between yesterday and this morning, I don't anticipate this to last but so much longer, right? Because there is still a lot much that the market is going to be suffering because of the fact of just the rate hikes itself continuing to happen and continuing to happen at a steady pace with no sign of relief, particularly, or when this is going to start to relief more so. Until we hear that from Powell and we hear that basically from the next FOMC statement that's going to be produced, I am not going to be the sign to say that we should end up getting a V-shaped recovery. All right. So that's just my sentiment that I'm looking at in terms of my game plan. Obviously, everyone needs to have their individual game plan. I would particularly say that yeah, I'm gonna start to build my position at 406, and then what my stop loss will be roughly the fact if we break north of 411, particularly breaking these three resistance points that make our resistance line for the falling wedge. If we break north of that, then I would reassess my position to either cut my loss and then re-enter at a later time. Be the case. But that's basically what my game plan is right now as we continue to pretty much push north. All right. So that I wanted to express to you guys in terms of today's price action. I'm gonna look for a little bit of a little tiny pullback. I don't think we're going to get anything major. If we get any kind of significant pullback, I believe it's going to be down towards 393. So I would be a little bit more cautious trying to play the short side, particularly because it's going to likely be rather short term and it's going to be rather rapid in terms of the fact that if you're going to look for a short this morning, to say, you know what, SPY ripped what 22 points, 23 points, then I would say on that short position, look to get your profits rather quickly and don't try to get greedy to the downside, especially when you know that the market is continuing to show relative strength for the moment being. All right. So that's what I'm going to look for. 393 is going to be my support. I'm going to watch for this morning. Ideally, I think that would be a healthy dip for continuation to the upside. And I expect it to be rather fast and rapid. And particularly today, more so than going into next week. All right. So 393 is going to be that spot. Let's see if we could potentially get a nice little buy the dip type of opportunity. And that'll be one that I particularly look to pay attention to. Now, I'll get in right off the bat. I'll get into two names that I actually am continuing to look at this morning. All right, two names. One is Tesla. We saw Tesla actually up about what $13 roughly yesterday. But the fact that how much the market ripped, and of course we saw Microsoft up about what near $19, Apple up about $12. It's easy to say that Tesla actually could have been up easily $20 yesterday. That was just looking from the broader market perspective. Basically left me feeling okay. Tesla was a lag between all this price action. Now, also given on the 30-minute here, you do have the potential for a 30-minute inverted head and shoulders. I'm going to look to see if this is going to invalidate below 186. Then we're likely going to invalidate this inverted head and shoulders. And we could break down. And I believe that there's nothing but thin air between 186 down to 181 half. There is nothing but air holding this up. All right. So I would particularly look to see if we have SPY going down towards 393 that I'm going to particularly look for, then Tesla may end up being the one that's going to particularly show that relative weakness, as it's basically showing here pre-market. Otherwise, if we can hold that 386 mark, look for Tesla to snap back, and then look for the breakout to take place here. In which case, I'm going to look to see if we can reclaim over 189, and that'll be where I'm going to look to potentially look for a buying opportunity. All right, but 386, I anticipate that's going to be tested here. It's going to be rather key to see if it holds or if it breaks below, in which case that'll give you your breakdown below it, or you hold that 186 and you look to reclaim 189 for the continuation to the upside. And then you can see the little green shaded area here. That would be particularly a gap fill that is left rather incomplete, sitting up towards 197, in which you can see where your potential upside is on this one. All right. So the fact that it was a rather relative weakness for a strong market yesterday, and it is showing weakness here this morning. Let's see if it actually has a bounce back, or do we see the progression for that weakness to very much take us down and basically waterfall us down towards 181 half. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that one. The other name that I think is low key, pretty much a much more a lagger from yesterday's price action, was also looking at Google. Google's one that I believe was more so a lagger from yesterday as well. Let's see what Google could potentially do here as well. You had a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders. I want to say a little bit more of a tilted inverted head and shoulders, depending how you want to look at it. That took place. You had the nice little gap up, a little bit of a left shoulder. You have the head, right shoulder, gap up, based on here off the hourly, on the hourly 100-day EMA. And now we're going to look to basically push north over that 200-day EMA on the hourly, sitting at 95.12. So what I would do is particularly look to say, okay, let's see if we can break over that 200-day EMA off of the hourly there, 95.12, and confirm a breakout above 96.05. Above breaking out over 96.5, I think that's when we're going to basically look at what is a very large gap fill. And I believe we have potential to pretty much enter that gap fill at the very least going into today. So that's one I'm going to look at for particularly a day trade. If I can get that break over 96, then that's about easy a $2 move towards testing the gap fill, and then the rest would be pretty much leaving runners right through that gap fill to see exactly how much we could potentially fill. But resistance within that gap fill would be roughly right around 100 half. 100.56 is what I'm looking at for resistance within that gap fill, that we could see a little bit of a breather, a little bit of a pullback, and the continuation back up. All right. But this is another one, similar scenario to how Tesla was a lag yesterday in terms of this broader market price action. I'm going to also be looking to see if Google can pick up some momentum here today, in which case we saw how aggressive Microsoft was, saw how aggressive Apple was leading us to the upside. Those names may not see particularly that type of price action, obviously. May not even see half of that price action they got yesterday in terms of that actual move. So I'm gonna look to see where else in the particular do we see a rotation with some momentum to start to pretty much continue us to the upside. All right. So that's basically the two names I think I'm rather high on in terms of what I'm gonna be keeping at the top of my watch list is Google and Tesla. Other than that, I could probably point to some names that I think relatively hit some resistance. Boeing was one of them. I came on live here yesterday talking about Boeing continuation up towards 179 here, and I believe it was off the 30 minute. Was it off? Yeah, the 30 minute gave you a nice little tweezer top action as we pretty much regressed, and we are continuing that regression here pre-market this morning. I'm gonna be watching for support test here. Support test is right around 174.97 is what I'm looking at for support test, and then below that support test at 174 there, I'm going to be looking to see if we end up regressing below that 174, we can come down to test the hourly gap fill that we have that's presented from yesterday's gap up, and that'll take us down towards 171 here, just below 170, yeah, just below 172. We'll be testing the gap fill and then also the 20 EMA off of the hourly as well. All right. Lobo, what support do I have on Google? Let me backtrack right quick. Support that I'll be watching here for Google will be right at 93, 93.38 is what I'm looking at for support. All right. So as long as we should end up holding that 93, and then as long as we hold that, we should end up getting that continuation and break north over at 200 EMA. All right. Otherwise, let's see what other names we have going down the list. Let's see what else we have. Microsoft is another one. You can continue to keep it on the watch list, but more so the reason why I didn't want to pretty much focus on Microsoft and Apple is because I believe these more so kind of keep us in a range, and which is going to be a more so a tight range considering that impulse up that we got yesterday. But if you're looking for particularly the support here off of Microsoft, I would keep an eye to see this regress down towards 240.28 is where I have support pretty much sitting. So 240.28, look to see if you can hold that level at 240.28. Otherwise, that brings us down towards 237.21, basically giving us back bah, roughly three quarters of the move from yesterday's price action. And then we'll see if that ends up being a some kind of meaningful support there. All right. Upside wise, if we can hold that 230 that 238 here, then I would look for upside. Next PT to the upside here will be sitting at 246 is my next level of resistance that I have. And if you can also notice, if I pretty much try to expand it here, you can also see the fact that we're in a rather large gap fill that pushes us up towards 249. All right, so 246 would just be our next, I want to say, minor resistance for a potential next level of consolidation, next level to pretty much give us a little bit of a minor pullback, but continuation should continue up towards 249 to give us that entire gap fill. At what given point that's going to get us up towards that gap fill, whether it be entirely today, that's plausible. I'm not going to say it's not, given the price action we had yesterday. But I would anticipate that we get close enough to that 249 going into next week, probably Monday, Tuesday, on continuation of this broader market rally that we have. All right. So that's another one that you can point to as well. Let's see if we go down the list. Amazon was one I felt like I left gains on here. I wanted to pretty much get a little bit more of a pullback, but I didn't particularly get that from yesterday to re-enter on it. But that was a hell of a move. We pushed right into the hourly 100 EMA, sitting at 98.47. And that was a beautiful push, a nice little continuation that we're seeing this morning. Let's see if we can particularly hold that progression that we have pre-market. But support on this one, I'd be watching is 96.73. You hold 96.73, look to break back above that 100-day EMA that was resistance yesterday, above 98.47, and that should push us into our next level of resistance sitting at 103 half is what I'm looking at on Amazon. So this is, I actually would want to point to the fact that Amazon is actually one that's been relatively beaten up, and I think that's been a little bit more of the case of scenario that you look for the names that have been relatively beaten up through this bear market. And I can basically call those out. You're looking at Meta, you're looking at Amazon, and you're looking at Netflix, right? I think for the most part, those three names within the tech sector have been actually brutalized the most. And those actually stand to benefit the most between this entire bear market rally that we're going through right now. So if you really wanted to point to names that should can get that solid type of continuation, and I'm not just relatively speaking about today's price action itself. I'm speaking more so towards going into next week as we complete this rally. But those are relatively the three names that I believe on the back end of Microsoft and Apple's damage that they did yesterday. Those three names that have been brutalized the most and stand to gain the most in terms of the gaps that they have left behind and should get that continuation. So just three names that, yeah, if you're looking to pretty much do your homework yourself, your DIY, right? Basically look to see those three names specifically and do your homework in terms of looking at their levels individually and looking for that continuation if you're potentially looking for the swing calls going into next week. All right. So that's just a little bit of an insight, some things to pretty much keep an eye on. If you're looking at, say, you know what, I don't know what particularly to look at, as everything just goes vertical, those are particularly three names that you want to keep on the radar constantly. All right. So other than that, though, I don't believe there's anything that necessarily stands out to say that I want to pretty much go through the entire list of the tech sector. We obviously saw Nvidia, pretty much the fact that we have earnings for Nvidia coming up. This thing has just been absolutely vertical nonstop. I wanted to see us pretty much pull back to this 154 half for a potential a little bit of a dip and rip type of entry, but the fact that it's continuing to rip pre-market, I would rather stay sidelined on this. I'm not particularly in the club of trying to chase this entire price action, but it does look like it's getting a hell of an earnings run up, quite a bit ahead of its little earnings that it has dating towards 11/16 is their earnings. So that actually might be next week. Am I right? 11th, I believe next week Wednesday is Nvidia earnings. So if I'm being honest, this actually might go vertical, continuing to go vertical right into the earnings as the rally continues. which I'm still not in the fan of pretty much trying to chase this. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's definitely not going to be within my gut of trying to chase this. If you're looking for a minor level of support, particularly, I would look to see if you can get a dip at 156.23. 156.23 would particularly be a nice little dip opportunity if you're feeling bold and you want to particularly see that there's more momentum to build here. But yeah, I mean, it should continue. If this ends up going vertical further, and I believe that we should hit this resistance off the back end of earnings, not necessarily before, but I'm looking at 168 half is where I have my upside here for Nvidia, and I will lead to the fact that it might end up hitting that resistance on the back end of earnings more so than continuation on the earnings run up. All right, but that would particularly be the resistance level that I'm watching is that 168 half on Nvidia. All right. Other than that, though, as I pretty much have been rambling on, I actually do want to see if what tickers are actually pretty much trending right now. Let me take a look and see what's trending right now. I will say a nice little pullback actually happening on futures right now as well. So I already went through Nvidia, pretty much covered that. AMD is actually trending as well. I don't think there's anything particularly that stood out to me on AMD here. Resistance that I'll be watching here for AMD is sitting at 73. 73 is that level of resistance that I have. Above 73, then you're looking at the 100-day EMA sitting at 76. But 73 would be my level of resistance that I'm watching for AMD. The fact that you should get a support test here this morning at 67, 67.39, retest the 50-day EMA as support off of the daily here, and then look to see if that ends up presenting itself as a dip buy opportunity for continuation behind that rally that we're already seeing with Nvidia leading the semis. All right, let me take a look and see what else there is that kind of crosses my radar here in terms of some names. All right, so nothing else besides the semis just trending right now here relatively this morning. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to take a look at real quick here. Like, give me just a quick sec. Actually, one thing I did want to see, how is crypto actually doing this morning? Let's take a peep at crypto. All right, so crypto's not having itself a great morning. It's continuing its regression here this morning. That is not pretty. Had a nice little pump with the broader market yesterday, but that is actually regressing. Bitcoin, I assume, yeah, Bitcoin's not having it. And next up, looks like, yeah, 16 was my stop for Bitcoin. Next up below this, that should take Bitcoin down towards 13,000. And to be honest with you, even the fact that the broader market is actually continuing its rally, I would not be surprised to see the fact that if Bitcoin actually opens up around 13,000 starting next week, just because of the fact that it may end up bleed through the entire weekend, and I would not particularly be surprised if that ended up happening. So other than that, though, roughly just about under what 4 minutes here for market open. We're getting that little pullback that I wanted at the opening bell, but it's actually happening before the bell. In which case, it's actually going to tell me that we're just going to likely get a rip right out of the gate for most of these names. That's going to be something to pretty much watch the fact that, and also, yeah, Tesla's actually approaching right into my support at 186 off of this little morning pullback. It's going to be interesting to see if it snaps right back out of that 186 support level or if it breaks below. That'll be something very interesting right at the open that I'll be watching for. But I just hate the fact that we got the drop, the little basically our dip before the opening bell rather than after the bell, which I wanted to use as a dip buy entry. So that's a little bit more of a head scratcher. Kind of alters my game plan just a tiny bit here this morning. But again, that's why we have levels. That's why we respect levels. That's why you even just saw El Lobo pretty much asking me levels. And that's exactly why it's very key to have those levels. If you break north of those levels, then that's where you want to look to pretty much use that as a regression. Or not a regression, but as a breaking point. If it breaks, you look for the retest, you look to get long, and you look to pretty much get your profits rather in and out rather quickly. All right. But not much else to pretty much discuss. What I'll do is I will pretty much leave my spy chart up for you guys to pretty much take a look at for the next 15 minutes after the opening bell. But after that, though, I pretty much that will be pretty much it. Any questions, concerns for pretty much most of the day here, well, this morning rather, for the next few minutes, drop a question in the chat, and I will be glad to pretty much assist or respond to that to my best ability. But other than that, I think that's pretty much a wrap from all of what I pretty much said this morning, and I will leave it there. It is Friday. Those of you doing 0 days, again, just a reminder, pretty much be cautious about the fact that don't try to diamond hold those 0 days. So look to get your quick profits, look to be in and out rather quickly. 20% profits, I think that's rather consistent, and you be in and out. Wait till next week. Look for the next setup. All right. But yeah, I think I rambled on for quite a bit. Alobo, appreciate you joining me, bro. As of everyone as well, appreciate you guys joining me this early in the morning. But you guys all have a great trading day. All right. Later, everyone.